Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and when it comes to emulation, I get that big old smile on my face, and especially when I want to talk about the biggest win we possibly have had just now. Now, I've talked a lot about emulation, okay? I play a lot of games with emulators, all right? Whether they be games that, I can still play, kind of, right, on my PC, but maybe I want to deal with, like, a 90% reduction in file size. I emulated Grand Theft Auto 5 on this channel, just to show you guys how old of a game that is, that we're actually emulating the PS3 version on the PC, all right? It actually works pretty well. But, a lot of emulation for me comes to playing old games. Like, honestly, I'll be real, I don't really feel like hooking up a PlayStation 2 or an old school Xbox or a GameCube or really any old system when I can just drag and drop a file into an emulator and just play to my heart's content. But there are a lot of games that you just can't get on PC, that are the games that are actually locked to systems. So for instance, do you want to play a game like Metal Gear Solid 4, one of my favorite games of all time? All right, I really do enjoy it, but you know what? There's no PC release. Sony and Konami haven't released the game on PS4 or 5 as of now, and it's just one of those games that's locked to an entire system. Now, normally I would cry and complain about it and say, hey, maybe you should re-release it. But thanks to emulators like RPCS3, I really don't care if a PC version comes out tomorrow. Because honestly, if you really wanted to play the game, you can just emulate it or pick up an old system lying around. But even if you wanted to play a game like Bloodborne, which doesn't have a PC release, it's locked entirely to a console, you would probably beg for a PC port or something, or like an updated version of it on the PlayStation 5. But given the last few months, emulators like Shat PS4 have absolutely been running Bloodborne with no problem. In fact, just for the argument of today's video, I want to run Bloodborne just a little bit. So I got a couple games over here. Bloodborne is one of them. And thankfully, due to the internet, you can patch these things with 60 frame rate fixes. You can skip those intro scenes. You can even disable motion blur if you wanted. God bless. Save those files and just slap on that emulator. And ladies and gentlemen, you can play this game as if it was an actual PC release. And not only can you play it on PC, but I've even seen people running this entirely on Steam Decks even. So if you're somebody that wants to play it on the go, it's a totally on-the-go option. Now, obviously, I started this game up again, and yes, it is running with all the patches, and ladies and gentlemen, it runs absolutely butter smooth. You can up the resolution if you wanted to, and thankfully, because it's the PC version of the game, you too can absolutely install modifications to this as well, which there apparently are a lot of mods for Bloodborne on the actual PC, or PlayStation if you will. And again, compared to the last time that I looked into this, ladies and gentlemen, you can see that for now, all of the lighting, all of the visual effects, everything shadow related, all the items on the ground, it really is pretty goddamn accurate. A lot of effort has been put into this, where you don't even need third-party mods. You can just play this as if you were actually playing on a PS4 or a PS5. So even if From Software or Sony doesn't want to put this on PC, it doesn't matter anymore, ladies and gentlemen. The game has been preserved. Much like Metal Gear Solid 4, that yearning, that yearning for a PC port, at least from my experience, isn't really there. The only reason I would get the PC port at this point is because no matter what, it will always run better on these handheld systems because it's not being emulated. Or it's just an easy system to get up and going. But if you're somebody that really cares about these games, then, ladies and gentlemen, here's the reality of it. If you really wanted to play Bloodborne, you could have picked up a PlayStation 4 or 5, a copy of the game on, PlayStation Store is $20 now? A physical copy might be less. You could have picked up Metal Gear Solid 4 for the PlayStation 3. In fact, I got a copy sitting right over here. Yeah, Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection with all the original games, boom, ready to go. And all you really needed is a PlayStation 3, which you can still find somewhere in the store. But the reason why this is a big win that I'm talking about today is this game right here, PT. Now, PT, for anybody that doesn't know, is one of the most horrific horror games probably ever made. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this was a playable teaser for a game that was released, I want to say probably 8-9 years ago, and it was released by a company known as 7780 Studio. It showed up on the PlayStation Store one day, and you bet me and plenty of other horror game YouTubers at the time immediately downloaded this and gave it a try. And what we were blessed with was a pretty haunting experience. Now, it's not a massive video game. It's basically you walking through an L-shaped corridor, and there's a lot of puzzles that you're doing in between these several like loops that you're committing in the game. Now, the one thing about this entire release is the actual horror that comes from it. Now, the puzzles have you focusing on weird fetuses to find, but inside the game is an enemy known as Lisa. Now, Lisa is a character that, if you actually play the game and understand the, forensics of it, she is always tracking you down. The super scary character that the further you go into the game, the more horrific her actual encounters become. She'll be looking at you through like windows. She'll be peeking at you from the from like the second story above. She'll be looking deep into your soul. And the later you get into the game, the way that they've designed the map, she will always be tracking you no matter what. You will always have a blind spot on this creepy as fuck character. Now, this game was not made by 7780 Studio. It was actually made by Konami, and it was one of the early playable teasers of a game known as Silent Hills that Hideo Kojima was working on. Now, long story short, Hideo Kojima and Konami had a massive falling out. And he basically got his name removed from Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. He got pretty much removed from the company. Now, what we got in return was Kojima leaving Konami, and we ended up getting Death Stranding, which is a game I very much enjoy. They got a sequel coming out in like a week or two at this point, which I'm actually pretty excited to play. Now, the thing about this game is, obviously, in this divorce, the game was nuked from storefronts. Overnight, Sony took it off the actual PlayStation Store. Konami basically forgot it existed. This game became vaporware. It just disappeared. And for a long time, if you were a gamer, trying to get access to this meant that you would have to either never have deleted it from your system, which I don't. I actually have a PlayStation 4 that has the PT demo right here, which is coincidentally where I ended up getting the footage from anyways. But the other thing is you could go to eBay, and of course the scumbaggery would be here. PlayStation 4 with PT sold for 500 Canadian dollars. Hey, do you want a PS4 Pro at a certain version, which is actually good because you can hack that version, with PT and 57, hopefully not pirated games, 1250 Canadian, okay? Hey, do you want a PT with just the Silent Hill demo? 1,000 Canadian buckaroonies. So again, the expectation to play this game, if you wanted to experience some history, well, you better pony up the bucks, you better pony up them clams, or you can just emulate it. Now, in the last couple of weeks, there have been actual efforts made at emulating it, and that is why I have PT installed, ladies and gentlemen. Now, to show you how this works, we're going to hit that old play button over here and just start up that PT experience. Now, this is version 1.0, and I don't believe that PT ever really got an update or anything. But again, to fire it up, you'll get this big old black screen, and the game is basically building itself up, so just give it a second. So all right, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. I can pick English as my subtitles. I don't know if I can modify the actual brightness, but if I can slap that big old back button, and here it is, 7780's cut off. And watch out, the gap in the door. It's a separate reality. So yeah, it's actually here. Oh, that's crazy, dude. Holy crap, she was right there. She spawned right on me. Woo, that's not good. So, of course, ladies and gentlemen, here it is. PT is actually running on an actual system. So, boom, here it is. The world is loading. And, yeah, you can see the textures aren't all the way there. In fact, this version of the game is slightly more creepier than the actual base version. Things are slowly but surely dying. But of course you can see that the game's visuals are actually rendering up, and surprisingly, I'm not going to joke, it's actually creepier to play the game this way. Now, if you're remembering, this is like what I was saying, like if you're in this corner, you will always have a blind spot with Lisa, the actual character. Now, she hasn't spawned into the game yet because it's very much the beginning, but the audio works. And in fact, the textures, while they're having a problem, this is a lot of progress that I didn't expect to see. And the reason why this is actually super impressive to me is that one thing that I did notice is that somebody actually made a full playthrough, so technically this game is playable from beginning to the credit screen at the very end. Now, one thing I will say is because it's so dark, this game is actually even creepier than I remember. But yes. Dude, I don't know if those, like, lights in the distance are her eyeballs, or what the fuck. Oh, yeah, the door. Hold on. The door bangs a little bit, and then you can finally actually escape the area. Okay, so that's one of the... So when it comes to this game, there's, like, puzzles you have to do. And, like, you have to do, like, a few encounters in the game. And from that, you'll actually be able to, like, escape to the next loop. Now, I believe the ending for this game had to have you do something really stupid with the PlayStation mic. Like, you had to do, like, a whole bunch of superfluous bullshit just to basically get to the end of this game. And I remember when I was streaming it, I just, like, completely quit playing the game right there and then. But obviously, some of the things like texture works, I don't think this is an accurate texture in the game. But, yeah, some of the stuff seems to work. It seems like the lighting just sort of crashes the more the shader cache actually ends up building for it. But again, it's a pretty interesting thing to see, like, the development of one of these emulators kind of go. Now, of course, obviously, I'm sure it's not all that exciting to the people watching here to go, all right, I can barely see 1 foot in front of me, Mood. Are you playing Silent Hill on the PS1? Or is it actually Silent Hill, like, on the actual emulator? And one thing that I did notice that actually blew my mind away was the amount of work that the community had put into making special builds for the game. So one YouTuber that I've shown you before, Deck Wizard, showcased a build of the game where they kind of stripped down the lighting and they actually had it functioning not just on, you know, PC, let alone, but on the actual Steam Deck. So this, like, weird pastelish looking version of PT actually ended up with you, like, playing through the entire game, and there was ways that you could see even reflections of a character through, so like Norman Reedus's character, which was obscured until the very end, and of course it wouldn't entirely all the way work too, like when lighting wasn't around for anything, you would lose every aspect. So for instance, right here with Lisa in the hallway, to show you exactly where she would show up. So for instance, walking around inside this footage, Lisa would just, like, sort of show up like this, and she would, like, appear to just be this character made out of light this time, and just basically haunt you. Now, the thing about this version of the game, ladies and gentlemen, is that you can actually play this specific build. I did, in fact, find this build. It's called PT Hacks Shat PS4 0.7.1. Now, the thing is, you do have to have your system modules dumped from the actual PlayStation 4, from what I understand. And that I can't share with you, that I can't tell you how to get. I actually had to get them from my actual legitimate PlayStation 4 by dumping it, I would assume, pretty legally myself. Now, the reason why this is really important is that up until this point, the only real way to play PT on the PC, or like a preserved version, was through something known as like Unreal PT, which is like a 700 megabyte recreation somebody made, which is pretty accurate and faithful on the PC. Now, the other thing that you could actually do is play some of the various mods. Like, for instance, this is GZPT, which by far might be one of the scariest ways to play it. I don't know what it is, but something with, like, the Doom engine and, like, horror shit just slaps so well. Like, if anything was probably the catalyst for, like, me loving gaming creepypastas is just, like, the internal visualization in my head of what every single one of those games would look like if presented in the style of, like, a Doom liminal space style game. It's one of the reasons why a lot of creepypastas related to, like, Doom or Doom-like mods actually do work pretty well, but that's a different story. But now, ladies and gentlemen, you can kind of play through all of PT through an emulator. Now, again, it's not perfect, and visually speaking, it's pretty dog shit compared to the other two fan recreations I showed you, but that's the thing about emulation. It starts from an error message, and it ends up with you eventually playing a game that was taken away till the end of time. Now, obviously, another big win kind of happened too. One of the things that I saw was gamers playing Drive Club, a game that was locked down away on the PlayStation 4, never released on PC, probably one of the prettiest looking games, and here it is actually running at 60 frames per second on the Shat PS4 emulator. So again, other games that have been locked away, that aren't Bloodborne, that aren't PT, games that somebody really enjoyed, are at least preserved. So at least in this case, you can kind of play this on PC. Now, even then, this isn't necessarily PT. You can still pick up like a disc copy of Drive Club and at least give it a few plays if you really want it. I mean, the emulator is so goofy and wild right now that even people have taken like Master Collection from Metal Gear Solid, like the actual like PS4 version, and have like run Metal Gear Solid 1 in the actual Master Collection. So we're emulating a PS1 game that is emulated on the PS4 and then emulated on PC. It's like emulatorception going on, dude. It's crazy. And again, other PlayStation games that are not on PC, games like Infamous Second Son, have actually started to show up and are working to some extent. Not perfectly again, but this game was giving you an error message like a few months ago. Now it's running at least 11 frames per second on average in the actual PlayStation 4 emulator, which again is better than an error screen. It's better than nothing. Now, nowadays, Konami is a lot better when it comes to, I guess, like making video games. I mean, I guess they're making a new Silent Hill game, which looks pretty sweet. But when it comes to a lot of old shit from Konami, I will say Silent Hills is the biggest kick to the dick still to this day. I really firmly believe it would have been one of the best horror games if Kojima was honestly allowed to cook and none of this drama happened at like Konami. But given the fact that only a snippet trailer of it exists in playable form, you know, for years it really wasn't accessible. And finally, at least gamers have a way to preserve that original piece of software that was gonna probably be lost to time immemorial. So ladies and gentlemen, massive emulation win. I would argue that this is the biggest emulation win, and the reason for that is a lot of the other games that I showed you, you could still pick up an old copy, and you could still pick up like an old PlayStation 3, 4, somewhere in the world and play them. But with PT, you literally cannot even download it from the storefront anymore, and even if you could, they don't even allow you to install it underneath your current own PS4s or 5s. If you ever downloaded this, like me, you lost the ability to re-download it, even for newer hardware. So unless you're willing to run it on a modded PlayStation, or at least thankfully now, through the power of emulation, you too can relive one of the most horrific gaming experiences ever created by man. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.